Hey everyone, Cole Turnbull with Coeur d'Alene Advice Givers, where we interview Coeur d'Alene business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders to bring Coeur d'Alene residents the best advice from our community's brightest minds. Today, we're joined by Tom Morgan, founder of the Lake City Bicycle Collective, who, after identifying a gap in our community, Tom realized there were many kids who didn't have bikes to ride. So he came up with the idea of the Lake City Bicycle Collective. It all started with one kid, one bike, and we'll get into that story, as well as some of the challenges and issues we face as a community today. Thanks for coming on the show, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hey, we're going to dive into you as a person as well as the Bicycle Collective shortly. But first, we're going to get to know you, a little bit more and do a little rapid fire, all right?
Sure.
So let's have some fun. Where'd you grow up?
Right here in North Idaho.
Favorite childhood pastime?
Riding my bike.
What's your favorite song that gets you in the zone?
I don't have a favorite. I turn on the radio to like some classic oldies and just turn it up.
Go-to restaurant?
Oh, that's a tough one. Depends on what you're trying to have. I'm really kind of liking Momo right now, right downtown. Anyway, it's good. It fits your budget, and you get the experience of a really kind of an upscale, spendy meal, and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg.
Nice. Favorite Coeur d'Alene season?
I would say right now, I really like late summer into fall. It's a great time to ride your bike. You can just put on miles and miles, and you don't get too hot. It's a great. I like leaves are falling, lots of stuff to see. It's a good time of year.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
What's something you like to do the old-fashioned way?
Well, I'd say at 50 years old, most everything I do is the old-fashioned way. I'm really into vintage bicycles, so when I'm not turning wrenches on the new bikes, I really, really like to spend my free time working on antique vintage stuff. So I'd say if I had to do something the old-fashioned way, is probably also riding my bike.
What's the best day of the week?
Saturday.
Why?
It's the day I get to come up here and doing what I do as a service professional. I get to have a lot of conversations with people, and it's really fantastic. But it's in a different kind of environment up here. It's adults, it's kids, it's watching them interact with the bikes, watching them interact with each other, and having the opportunity to experience that. Saturday for sure is my favorite day of the week.
If you could only have 3 books for the rest of your life, what would they be?
One would probably be a bike repair manual. 2 would be anything by Jack London. When I was a kid, I must have read Call of the Wild 100 times.
Did he write White Fang?
Yes, he did.
I remember reading that book and Call of the Wild. Yeah.
Yep.
What's your favorite aspect of Coeur d'Alene?
I love how it's still a small community. Doing what I'm doing here, I've had the opportunity to make some connections to some of the city leaders, and I'm really impressed with the way that the mayor and city council and even the guys that work in this building here, the Parks Department, at the way they care about their community and the effort that they put in. You can see that they care, and I really like that.
Nice. All right, so that kind of wraps up rapid fire. Now we're going to dive a little deeper into it. So we're sitting here in the building, where you call home to the Lake City Bicycle Collective. But let's start from the beginning of the journey with the collective. What's the story? How did it all begin?
I've been a air conditioner furnace repairman for many years, and years ago, I had probably 15 years ago, I had a situation where, I showed up to a person's house to work on the air conditioner. It was summertime, and school was out, and I remember when I drove up in front of the house, there was a young man with his I don't know, he must have been 9 or 10, with his bicycle turned upside down on the handlebars, and I could see the inner tube hanging out of the back wheel, and he was clearly upset, and so I was there for a purpose, and so I went in and I did my thing, and 45 minutes later or so, I came back outside, and he had come in and out of the house a couple of times, and I'd heard a couple of interactions with he and his mother, and he was clearly not. He was upset that his bike wasn't working, and she didn't know how to help him, and so I go back out to the truck, and I'm carrying a bag full of tools, and I'm a bicycle guy, and they don't necessarily know that, and so I went back over to the house, and I asked his mom. I said, "Would you? I got a little bit of time. Would you mind if I helped him out with his bicycle a little bit?" And she's like, "Oh, that would be wonderful." So, I went back over there and I sat down on the ground next to him, cross-legged, and started talking to him about what was going on. And his friends were gone on their bikes, and he couldn't go. He couldn't ride his bike. So, anyway, so I spent the next 25 minutes or so with him, pulling the tire off of the bike and putting the tube back in. Luckily, it didn't have a hole in it. It was just had gone flat from sitting all through the school year, I guess, and he hadn't really tried to ride it much until school was out, and one thing led to another, and the inner tube ended up hanging out the side of the wheel or the tire, and so we got the tire back in, got him aired back up, got him gone. He didn't really even say thank you, or he just got on the bike and took off. He knew where the friends were, and he was gone like a shot. But I couldn't stop grinning for the rest of the day, and I thought, that's a pretty cool thing. I'd like to do that 10 times a day, and I set on the path to do that. It started with the next place I went to, not the very next house, but within a day or two, I was working on someone's air conditioner in the backyard, and leaning up against the tree in the backyard is this old bicycle, and so as I'm at the end of the repair, I'm writing up the invoice, and I'm talking to the this time it was a man, and I said, "Hey, what are you going to do with that old bicycle outside?" And we had a very pretty brief conversation. He's like, "Oh, that thing's headed for the dump, in the springtime when I clean up." And I said, "Well, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to have it. I'll fix it up, and I got a kid in mind that doesn't have a bicycle." And he was like, "You know what? That's a way better use for it than what I was going to do with it." So he let me have it, and that really kind of sparked the idea, And so from then on, I wasn't bashful at all about, if there was an old bike leaning up against a garage, or just laying in the backyard or something. If I could clearly see that that it was in disrepair and wasn't being used, I wasn't bashful about asking, "Hey, can I take that? I got a good use for that." And that's really where it began. Eventually, I had probably 3 years ago, I had a customer that's an attorney here in town, and he asked me, had I ever considered forming a nonprofit organization, and I hadn't really. And so we had a brief conversation. Well, the funny thing was, he's like, "Hey, I got something for you." So it's pretty common for me to show up to do someone's spring or fall checkup on their HVAC equipment, and for them to have found a bicycle somewhere and set it aside for me, and so I probably bring maybe 3 or 4 bikes a week back here that come from people in the community who know what I do, who find these bikes, hang onto these bikes, save these bikes. I got one guy that runs around to garage sales on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays, and if he can find a bike for $5, he'll pick it up and bring it here. So there's a lot of people. This has connected a lot of people. So
nice. So what was it that you saw, as far as the niche in the community of, kids that needed help, that needed bikes, that, something that most people don't think about?
Coeur d'Alene is a community that has the full spectrum of incomes. You know, I'll work, you know, on a $5 million mansion, you know, in one call, and later on in the same day, you know, I might be somewhere else in the county, you know, working in a, you know, single wide manufactured home. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying that, you know, you can see the people that have the opportunity to have everything, and then you can see the people that work really hard and struggle. And so, you know, sometimes the kids don't have stuff, and it's not their fault. You know, kids are kind of at the mercy of whoever's taking care of them. You know, and so, and again, families work hard and they struggle. You know, I came from a low income family, and you know, I'm the oldest of 6, and I think for 6 kids we had 3 bicycles. You know, and some people with 6 kids have no bicycles, and so I thought, you know, there's something that I can do about that, and so I set about making it happen.
Yeah. So growing up, you know, when you have 6 kids and 3 bikes, I'm sure there was many times, you know, that you can remember where like, man, you know, I wish we had a bike. You know,
Absolutely.
Bike for every kid,
I wish I had a bike of my own. You know, wish I had a bike of my own. You know, and when there's 6 kids and there's, you know, and there's 3 bikes, it's fairly common to think, you know, hey, I want to go somewhere, I want to jump on the bike, and you go outside and they're all gone. Mm-hmm. You know, because the other kids got them. And yeah, anyway, it's tough. People work hard and struggle, and my parents worked really hard, but you know, there were 6 of us, and it was difficult sometimes.
So I mean, you're clearly passionate about bikes.
Absolutely.
But what was it inside of you after, you know, those first couple encounters with, you know, people and kids and stuff that were like, you know what, I'm going to run with this, and there's, you know, my purpose in life is to, you know, love of bikes, and my mission, you know, to help bring those bikes back to life, you know, for kids. What was it in you that kind of lit that spark and kept that fire going?
You know, if you see the face of a kid that you give, you know, their own bicycle to, you know, I tell you, so last Christmas we were delivering bikes right up until Christmas Eve, and you know, you take the bike and you know, give it to the mom, and you know, sometimes they were, you know, going to be given Christmas Day. Sometimes the kid was there for me to hand it right to them, and I tell you what, they cry, their moms cry, you know, we cry. It's the human connection, I tell you, it feels good. There's no, I don't know how else to say it. There's you know, doing something for somebody else feels good, and you know, there's, you know, my hope is that these kids, you know, you're paying it forward. So you know, some of these kids, you know, these bikes, we've been doing this now for almost 2 years, and so I've got kids that have come in, you know, early when we first had moved in here, that were small, and kids grow, you know, rapidly, and so they came in, they got their first little bike here, and you know, now 2 years later, I had a mom come in here with 4 little kids, and she was dropping 2 of the bikes off, and moving up to 2 bigger bikes, and then so that, you know, because there are 4 of them, they're in stair steps, and so the 2 small kids had moved into 2 of the bigger bikes that the kids had taken a couple of years ago, and the 2 bigger kids were bringing their bikes back that were too small, and we took them back in, put them back through the cleanup process, put them back outside, but that day they took 2 bigger bikes and bigger helmets, because obviously when they grow tall, everything else grows too, and so we were able to establish a connection to that family, a relationship with those kids, and really, you know, I would hope that these kids would develop a love of bicycles now that lasts them through the rest of their life. And right now they're young, and they're coming in here, and they're getting, they're picking out, the best bike that they can get from us. And but when they're older, these kids are going to grow up. They're going to be, they're going to have jobs. They're going to, they're going to move into society like the rest of us, everybody does. And, they're going to be having kids of their own. And so as an economic driver, hopefully these kids will be in a situation where maybe they can go to one of the bike shops or something and buy a bike. I mean, these bikes are good bikes, but they're not the quality of bikes that like a bike shop sells.
Mm-hmm.
They're entry level. They're box store bikes, and they're great for the purpose. But and who knows? Maybe they're struggling too, and so they end up coming in here and bringing their kids in to get bikes. I hope that this is something that continues on. And honestly, that's something else I think of is, at 50 years old, I figure I got another, really 10 years of working at the pace that I'm at. But my hope is that I meet somebody along the way that loves what we're doing as much as we are, and that I can hand the reins of this thing off to somebody else in the future, and it continues to go. I'd like to know that this thing will be here in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, doing what we're doing, and hopefully doing it better.
How many bikes do you guys provide in a year's time, or average?
We are, so far this year, we're around 220 have gone out that door. Last year, the first year we were in here, I think it was about 140. And Christmas hasn't even come yet, so I anticipate moving. Last year we did 33 bikes, I think, as Christmas gifts. I really anticipate that we could double that this year. But I anticipate it as probably at least 50 more will go out before the end of the year. So we're at 220. Really, we're really close to 300 bikes. We'll go through these doors this year. So pretty proud of that.
And then I imagine that's something, that's you're probably getting your name and what you guys are doing out to the community, so kids and.
Well, we talked, in the beginning it was, we had a strong connection to teachers in the 271 school district. It was teachers and counselors, and I live right over by Lakes Middle School, and so I knew a teacher that worked there, and he connected me to a counselor that worked there. And turns out that I didn't know it at the time, but the principal at that school I had actually gone to school with at Lakeland since middle school, and so it was kind of good to reconnect with him, and so that connection to at Lakes Middle School is what started the whole connection into the 271 school district. And I met a fella by the name of James Coeur who works in after-school programs, and he works with kids that are families that are struggling. And James, man, that guy, passionate. He loves what he does. And James was a fantastic connection. And James got me into half a dozen other schools, and that really opened a lot of doors for us, and so right now I'm working with I've got a couple of church organizations that we help get bicycles to, and then other nonprofits, and St. Vinny's has a transitional housing program. Holy Family has a transitional program. They've got a guy that works at Holy Family and at or not Holy Family. No, great name escapes me at this time. But anyway, there's a guy that works at St. Vincent's. His name's Clark, and Clark is he's a bike nut just like I am, and he's had a program down there for a while where he helps the people that are in the housing program there, helps keep them on bikes. They're in that program. They're trying to get to work, and they're trying to get back on their feet from whatever their situation is. And Clark's been helping with that for quite a while, and so that connection was a great connection up here, and so he and I talk pretty frequently, and he's always calling me up and saying, hey, I need some parts for this, or I got some people that need something and I can't really help them. I think you can. And so again, it's just, you make your connections, but really it's not something that happens. You'd think there would be some big platform where you go out and go, hey, we're here and we're doing this thing, and the people would just come in, and that hasn't really been the way. We've had a couple of situations where we've done some stuff that's garnered us a newspaper article or something, and that usually creates a quick flurry, but then it's gone as fast as it arrives. The connections that have stuck and kept going and have really been the slow kind of groundswell of what's happening here are the one-on-one connections. You meet a family, and well, here's the normal scenario: get a call from the school. I've got a kid in my class that could benefit from a bicycle, and in the beginning, I used to just take a bike up to the school and hand it off, but then I thought, well, that's really probably not the best way. Was the oldest of 6 kids. This kid is probably a member of a household that's got other kids as well. So, I know how I kind of didn't like having 3 bicycles in a 6-kid house, and so I thought, why would I want to infuse one bicycle into a? So then it was, hey, do you mind if I, thanks for the lead. Do you mind if I call the mom, talk to the parent? And so usually a request for one bike in a classroom ends up being, 3 or 4 bikes provided for a whole family. And that's, that makes an impression on people. And so that mom talks to another mom who talks to another mom. And so this has really, really kind of been one family at a time. That's been the most impactful, consistent growth.
So out of I'm now over the years, I'm sure you've had plenty of times where you've been touched, teared up, whatever, connecting with
Absolutely.
with one of these families.
Absolutely.
You want to share a story maybe of one particular time that really like, man, like, go to bed feeling real good about yourself?
There's been a lot of them. Again, it's I love this time of year, as we're getting closer to the holidays, because it really, everybody becomes, more mindful of needs in general. And, but I used to have, one story maybe, or 2 stories that really used to crush me. But I think, right now the thing is when you see a family that's clearly struggling. I have folks that come in here that they don't own a car. The bicycle is their only means of transportation. I think probably one of the ones that got me the most is there was a gal that came in that she was a single mom because her husband had lost his life in Iraq, and so there's no father figure in the house anymore, and she's still quite upset about it. And when she sees the boys, 2 young boys, struggling through that, it was hard for her. Mm-hmm. And so when she's telling the story, it's hard for me. It's hard for anybody that hears that. And so to have the opportunity to spend time with those kids, that's huge. And that wasn't even necessarily a bicycle related story, other than she came in to get bikes for them, and they found the bikes they wanted, and but again, to be able to be here to provide something as simple as a bicycle. I think a lot of us look at a bike as a toy, like a plaything, or that thing that we get on to, just to cruise downtown and grab a bite to eat or something. And we don't look at it the way that, it's a tool. I mean, it's absolutely a tool. It's got great utility, and so if you're someone that's struggling and just can't afford the burden of owning a car, and I say burden because it's if you're struggling financially, a car really is a burden, and keeping it in repair and keeping it full of gas and keeping tires on the thing, they're expensive, and so a bicycle is absolutely an inexpensive way to get you to all the same places that a car will get you to. You don't have as much range, I suppose, but you really can build a life around the places that you can get to on your bicycle. You can reach the grocery store, you can reach the laundromat, you can get to the doctor's office, you can get to all the necessities on your bike, and at very little cost and hardly any maintenance. Absolutely a utility tool. I know I got off topic there, but
No, that's all right. That's all right. It happens. I can see you're clearly, you're passionate
I'm
about
a fan
it.
of the bike. I drive a truck every day. I have to because the work I do requires me to be able to haul tools and parts and pieces around. But when I'm not driving my truck, quick runs to the Quickie Mart or wherever, when I'm out of my truck at the end of the day, I'm out of my truck, and if I got to go somewhere, my kitchen is actually, or dining room actually is a bike parking lot because I got a bike in there. My wife has 2 bikes in there, and my wife, she rides her bike probably 300 days a year. She rides in the snow. She rides in the rain. And just a quick, shout out to her. I couldn't. You're married. You know this. A wife really helps a husband meet his full potential. And she most definitely helps me meet mine. And I couldn't be doing. Most Saturdays you come up here, and that I'm up here, she's up here too. And it's thank God for her every day.
Yeah, you have to have the support, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to dive in a little bit now, more or less, the business side of the things, and what keeps you guys ticking and going. So,
Sure.
What has been the biggest challenge of running the bicycle collective?
We always need money, and we try our very best to, the bikes come in. Sometimes it takes, 4 broken down bikes to build one good one. But a lot of times, you can't find the part you need on one of the other bikes. And so you have to be able to buy stuff. And so money has been it's any nonprofit will tell you money is something that they need. Really, probably for me personally is time, because again I own a HVAC repair company, and actually I say that I'm one guy with one truck, so I run, and I probably put in 50 hours a week doing that, and then I come up here and I put another 20 or 30 hours a week into this, and I have been able to recently. I was telling you earlier about we try to get volunteers to come in and help, and a lot of people go, "Gosh, I'd like to help with that, but I don't really know how to fix a bike." And so we found that it was intimidating to some people. So we actually started doing evenings after work where we were doing, instead of fix it, we were doing take it apart. We need a lot of stuff taken apart, and so that was less stressful for people. You don't have to know how to do anything. You don't have to have any tools. We have all the stuff. Just come up here and help us take stuff apart. And by taking stuff apart, people were learning how things go back together. And so I have a volunteer now that comes in every Thursday, that can now, with very little help, assemble. If I took a bike apart, this guy could put it back together, and he found the courage to do that by coming to take it apart night, and he's like, man, that was fun. So he came back for the next one, and he came back for the next one, and finally he's like, I think I'm ready to start putting some of this stuff back together. And so, for that was over the course of a couple of months. So he came to, we had one take it apart night per week, and so he came to all 4 of those, and then he finally, said, I want to put stuff back together. And so then we did the whole month. We did put it back together, and like I said, at this point, he can take a coaster brake bike, something that doesn't have a bunch of cables, and he could completely disassemble one. And I've actually seen him do it right here in this room. Take 2 or 3 other bikes and build one functioning good bicycle out of 3. And that's a skill that he learned right here in this building, right here in this room. And so now he's very, very helpful. There's been a couple of times where I couldn't stay, and so I would come up here, I'd unlock the door, I'd let him inside. There'd be a couple of folks that were doing stuff, and I actually am to the point now where I can leave him alone in here, and he can get stuff done. So get volunteers, volunteers that know how to do stuff. Usually around Christmas time, I'll get 1 or 2 bike mechanics, some of the guys that work in the local shops that will come in and put hours in, and so that's always good. But yeah, I think having volunteers to come in and do stuff, money, and we never have any shortage of bikes. It's pretty easy to put out a quick blurb on a Facebook post or an Instagram post, or sometimes I like to go like once, maybe twice a year, and go do the I call it the circuit, but you go and you'll hit the Kiwanis clubs, and you'll hit the Rotary groups, and you'll hit some of the business organizations and tell them about what you're doing, and try to garner some support. And so in an organization that's got, say, 50 people in it, you'll get a lot of heads in the room nodding, oh yeah, I get that. I see how that could work. And so out of those 50, you'll get 5 or 6 of them that will bring some bikes by, or tell somebody else about you, and out of a group that size, you'll probably get one person that really gets it, and becomes a regular supporting person. The nice thing about that is now that person is a part of that organization still, and they still talk to those folks once in a while. But yeah, it seems like I need to run around, like I said, at least once a year, and just hit a few of these organizations, and people go, oh yeah, I remember you, and again, it's great for a quick infusion, but it's sometimes I don't really get the long term. I'll tell you, the group that has been really, really supportive, and I think it's because it's full of moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, and but the 3 C's. I talked to those guys, probably 9 months ago, and I tell you what, the financial support, the volumes of bikes, the just the constant encouragement, that is a group of people that gets stuff done in this city, the 3 C's. Yeah.
So volunteers, you're always, pretty much every nonprofit's, always, that's the challenges, right?
Absolutely.
Volunteers and capital.
Absolutely.
Of operating.
Those are the top 2.
You guys have, all these bikes out here that you've put together, and while you give away a lot, I know you said something earlier about you also sell bikes,
we
right?
Do. Yeah,
That's a way of bringing some of that capital in. Absolutely. For operating.
Yep.
And so, like, if someone's out there, like, hey, like, I need a bike for myself or my kids, like, what could they expect, to come in here and, like, to get a bike for, and or what are they looking at?
Usually, a bike that you can pick up at a box store for $150, you can come in here and probably pick up for $50 or less. Again, there's a couple of them out there that we were looking at on the way in that are not, they're not the typical bikes that we get. These are some high quality. And the guy that donated them even said that he didn't anticipate that these would be bikes that were just given away. He says you use them how you want to, but he says I'm hoping that these can be bikes that can generate some income for you guys. And so that's what we're looking to do. Is they're the three bikes that in particular. If you went to a bike shop and tried to purchase a bike along the lines of those, you're probably looking at somewhere in $400 to $600 with the accessories that those bikes have, and those bikes will probably go for $150 a piece. So still a great value, but the program needs that. So just to put some perspective on it, $100 the way that we work here, it will probably build 4 complete bicycles. So we usually end up with about $25 a bike in the bikes. And that's the way we're set up right now. Right now we're all volunteer. We don't have a single paid position. And but the reality of it is if we ever really want to get this thing going and make it self-sufficient, at some point we're going to have a paid employee.
Yeah.
And right now I can vision, it too. And, but with a little bit of support, in the beginning to get this thing functioning to its true potential, I think we can get to a point where we don't rely on donation so much, not capital donation. We need bikes to come in here. One of the things that, we're not looking to. Sometimes people ask me, why don't you give away new bikes? It's like, well, there's, the landfill isn't clogged up with new bikes. It's clogged up with good bikes that are getting thrown away. The backyards all over town aren't full of brand new bikes. They're full of, again, good bikes that are just in disrepair and not being used. And so, I would much rather repair and refurbish something that's already out there and keep it out of the landfill and just keep it from going to waste than to just buy more stuff. I don't think that's the solution. So
yeah, and you said something to me earlier, and we were looking in your room over here. It's full of bikes, and you got the boneyard out back, and you guys repurpose. Sometimes you'll take 4 bikes, 5 bikes, whatever, and you'll take parts off each of them and make one really good bike out of them, right?
Sure,
and then
absolutely.
You have other people around the community that use, art schools and that sort of thing that are using the parts.
Well, and so something else, I guess, when you go back to the question earlier about the struggles, capital, volunteers, and probably the other struggle that we deal with the most is just what to do with the number of bikes that we have. And when a bike goes to the landfill in the form of a bicycle with tires, as a bike, those don't get recycled the way that they should, and even the recyclers won't take a bicycle. It has to be broken down to, the part that they'll take. So like a metal recycler will take the metal, but the only way to get to the metal is to get all the other stuff off of it. So, we need parts in here to build bikes. But we don't need a bunch of bikes, standing around out back with 1 or 2 parts missing off of them. We need to strip that bike down bare, organize it into a bin where it's easily accessible, and what that does is that creates, that frame is metal, that frame is aluminum, and they're recyclable. Sometimes folks come in and they want to find a frame that they want to build their own bike from the ground up. We have a few of those, but really, it's just it gets to be so much stuff that you have to get rid of some stuff. And so we don't want to go back and just throw it back out at the landfill. So we strip it off completely, and these bikes got plastic reflectors. If the reflector's good, we save it. If it's broken, it goes in a plastic recycle bin. I've got a guy that comes in and takes the tires, and so the tires that are too dry rotted or just not going to be a bike tire again, we pile them up and save them. And when I get about 100 of them, he comes and picks them up, and he's got some kind of industrial use for them. There's a guy over in Post Falls that takes the old inner tubes, and we don't really patch anything. A patch is a temporary fix if you're out somewhere and you get a flat and you need to get back home. Use a patch, but for a permanent repair, we put a new tube in, and we feel okay about doing that because again, we've got somebody that takes the tubes and he makes belts and purses and wallets, and so the old inner tubes find another use. The old tires find another use. The metal frames get recycled and they find another use. The plastic finds another use, and art community loves. I don't. It depends on what they're building, but they seem to like, gears and sprockets and chains and stuff like that. Those are the ones that they're drawn to. Gizmos, another organization here in town that works with kids, comes in and at least once a year, sometimes more, and takes a truckload of bicycles, and they go and build all these human-powered machines. The kids' imaginations are allowed to go wild, but the art on the walls here behind us. There's another organization here in town called Emerge that helps connect people to art, and they're a nonprofit organization, 501c3, just like I am. And you can see the space that we're in is pretty industrial. It was a National Guard armory. I don't know, 60 years ago, 70, in the 40s and the 50s, and maybe longer. I know I talk to people in the community that come in here to donate that tell me they remember when the military trucks used to park here, and so if you talk to the older folks that have been in the community forever, they remember that. And so the place being, I like it. I kind of like the industrial kind of grungy feel of it, but my wife really didn't. She was like, we need to do something in here to brighten this space up. And so, I had a relationship with Jenny at Emerge, and I had actually donated a couple of my vintage bikes to her Day of the Dead. In fact, I think that's coming up pretty soon, next couple of weeks. Anyway, they do an auction and a fundraiser every year, and so I had donated a couple of my old restored bikes to her organization, and so I called her up and I said, hey, how I first met her was she was working with a family. She was working in the transitional program with a family down at St. Vincent's, and before I knew that she was involved with Emerge, she was looking for some bikes for some kids for Christmas, and so that was my first connection with her. And again, that one person, one at a time kind of connection, and later I made the connection to Emerge. And but anyway, so like I said, Shannon, Irwin came down here with some kids, and they spent a month in here conceptualizing, looking at the space, doing the grid work on the walls. And I came down. I was really interested in the whole process, and I like it. I really like what they came up with, and the concept was completely, the idea of the kids. I think the oldest kid that worked on it was 17. I think 13, 14, 15, years old, and it's really become a great part of the space. We like to come in here and turn on the lights, and boom, splash of color, and it just kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, they definitely brought some color and life
sure,
to those
sure.
brick walls.
Yeah. My hope is that I'm working on getting some permission to get some of this type of stuff on the outside of the building, because people come to drop stuff off and they're like, I'm not sure I'm in the right place, and so I'd like to get something like this on the outside of the building so that when you get here, there's no mistake that you're in the right place, you know?
Yeah. So what have you learned most about yourself since you started doing this?
I'll tell you one thing that I wish. I wish that that I had the courage to do this much sooner. A few years ago, the wife and I took a trip to Boise, and of course, we had our bikes on the back of the car, and lived here in Idaho my whole life, and I'd never been to Boise, and so we went to Boise, and we got on that green belt that they have down there. This fantastic, this wonderful bike path that runs through the city. I love the Centennial Trail here in North Idaho. It's a gem, but it doesn't go anywhere. You know, I mean, you can get on it here and you can get to there, but in between, it doesn't really connect you to the city. It kind of runs along the edge, you know, and I get it. You know, it was a Rails to Trails program, and they followed the railroad tracks. But at any rate, that green belt in Boise runs through the city. You know, it is so if you're a cyclist or a pedestrian, that green belt is really a highway. It's a city street. It connects you to things, and so we got on. It was fantastic. But anyway, I ran over this thing down there that they have all over the trail. They're called goat heads, and so there's a particular plant down there. I'm not even sure what it is, but anyway, it drops these seed pods that are just a ball of spines. And so I ran over it with my bike, and actually what happened was, and my wife was like, "Don't get off the trail, don't get off the trail." Well, I got off the trail and got a flat tire, and so I was looking for somewhere to go, and someone directed me to this program down there called Boise Bicycle Project. They just had their 11-year anniversary last Saturday, and I walked into that building, and I was like, "What on earth was this?" I was in Wonderland. It was fantastic. And so, you know, this was probably 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. And I talked about it forever. I mean, I must have drove my wife crazy talking about this thing. And man, I wish somebody in Coeur d'Alene would do something like that. I kept wishing for somebody else to do something like that, and it never happened. And honestly, I kind of daydreamed about doing it, but I thought, you can't do that. You can't do that. I didn't have enough faith in myself to do that. You know, I just wasn't.
Self-doubt.
Absolutely. I doubted myself. I thought, man, I'm not the guy to do that. You know, somebody else needs to do that. I would love to help. I'd like to be a supporting member, but I'm not the guy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and it never happened. And so, you know, I was sitting at the kitchen table having a conversation, and so my wife was like, why don't we just do it? Let's just do it. And so, you know, it's I've learned in 50 years of being on this planet that, you know, the reason I didn't get it done, you know, 10 years ago, I guess, is, you know, things happen when they're supposed to. You know, I've tried in my life to force things to happen. I've tried to make things, you know, bend to my will, and not always with a good result. In fact, rarely with a good result. You know, I think things are timely. When things are timely, they just come together. And so, you know, this was timely for me. It was timely. It could have been timely 10 years ago if I would have had the courage to try, but you know, right now it feels like it's timely. You know, she finally persuaded me to commit to it, and really what it was is she committed to me that I would have her full support to commit to this, and you know, my kids are almost all grown. You know, I've met the right people, I've made the right relationships, and it feels timely, you know, and I'm happy with the success. You always look at it and go, gosh, I wish this was better or that was better, and I think that's just, you're going to have those growing pains. I don't know that there's a, what's that little cartoon where the guy adds water, instant Martians or whatever, and kaboom, everything just pops up. But so there's no instant bike co-op to my knowledge. I've communicated with, on a regular basis still with the guys in Boise. Jimmy, the executive director and the founder of that program, he's a phenomenal guy, and so every time I get a chance to meet with him, I do. I've talked to the guys over in Missoula. There's a couple of different organizations that get a lot of national recognition in Colorado. There's another little bike co-op in Moscow. And so I communicate with all of those guys, and it's like, man, I've hit a hurdle. What did you do when you got here? And you get different answers, but you get some answers. You kind of get an idea. So I have this own idea in my own idea in my head, and but before I jump off and do it, I try to get some input from some other places. And so again, when I say timely, it's the support mechanism is there. The hunger from the community is there. The support mechanism for me of my wife is there, and yeah, it's I'm also she and I are also on the City of Coeur d'Alene Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee. So we meet down at City Hall once a month. There's a pretty big organization. There's a dozen or so people on that board, and we just meet and we talk about stuff related to pedestrians and bicycles and people with disabilities and access for everyone. And anyway, like I said, I made some great associations, and again, I wish I had the courage, maybe faith in myself, 10 years ago to try it then.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that, and everything happens for a reason, right? And goes right with what you just drove home. Last question for you. So, if you could get one message out to the community about the Lake City Bicycle Collective, what would it be?
One message. I guess. Well, I would say my request, I guess, would be that take a minute and look at what we're doing, and if it touches your heart, help. There's so many ways that you can come up here and you can give time. You can hit that donate button and you can give a few bucks. If you've got a dusty old bicycle and taking up space in your garage or rolling around in the backyard or something, and it's not going to be used by you again, and you don't have some family member or something to gift it to, gift it to us, and we will get it into the hands of someone in the community. Again, my firm and strong belief is that a bicycle, it's an incredible, simple invention. It's for some it's a recreational thing. For kids, it becomes your lifeline to the rest of the neighborhood. My world expanded exponentially when I learned how to ride a bicycle. You have the radius you can reach on in your sneakers, and when you get on a bicycle, that the radius just gets bigger, and it's such a accomplishment as a kid to learn how to. Do you remember learn how to ride a bicycle?
Yeah, you take those
remember
training
all
wheels
the
off
struggling and the falling over and the crying and all the stuff but that day, there's that day, that day where you just, man, again, it's like I bring these movie quotes or these pictures, but remember Forrest Gump when he the day that the braces came off of his legs and he learned to run. And so, for a bicycle, it's the same thing. The training wheels fall off and you just go, and you never, here I am 50 years old, and I'm still riding a bike, and I get as much enjoyment out of it as I ever did, and I'm still having accomplishments. I'm still breaking plateaus. I'm still doing more than I ever imagined that I could do, and I'm doing it on my bike. So, the bicycle answers. We got a lot of things going on in the world right now. Poverty is an issue, and so you can't afford a car, but who can't afford a bicycle? We're really worried right now. We're talking all this global warming, and I don't want to take this down any political roads at all. But if you were looking for a solution to carbon footprint and things of that nature, bicycles. How many trips a week could you cut out using your car? Just by jumping on your bicycle and heading to the grocery store and grabbing a day's worth of groceries instead of getting in your car and driving, or you want to go to that wherever, most people live their lives in about a 2 mile, 3 mile radius of, where they live. So, jump on the bike, go to the grocery store, jump on the bike, go to the hardware store, jump on the bike to go grab that burger and that beer, and so how many trips a week, a month, even if it was just a couple a month, car trips could you cut out just by jumping on your bicycle and I mean using your feet for that matter, but so carbon footprint reduction, just overall health, you want to lose that 10 pounds, or get on your bike, be more active, you want to get your kids, to stop spending all their time, in front of their PlayStation or their Xbox, or now these days, gosh, they're walking around playing games on their phones. Get them interested in bicycles. It has so much reach. So there's so many opportunities across many different spectrums that are answered, just by something as simple as a bicycle.
Awesome, Tom.
I'm sorry, I do ramble.
No, that's great. The less I talk, the better we are.
Yeah.
So that wraps up, anything that I have for you today. How can people get, in touch with you, in touch with the Lake City Bicycle Collective?
If you're on Facebook, you can find us on Facebook, Lake City Bicycle Collective. Also on Instagram. And I'm not sure. I think there's a Twitter page. I don't ever interact with it. My wife does, but you can find the website at www.lakecitybicyclecollective.org or at lcbcbikes.org, and just go look at the website. We like to show our milestones, and so we got some little. We got one whole page that's just dedicated to. How many bikes we've given, how many bikes we've kept out of the landfill, how many helmets we've given, and I forgot to give a big thank you to Kootenai Health. They provide us with as many helmets as we can use, and so I'm sure. Well, they made a one-time gift of 200 helmets, and so. But yeah, I have a connection over there that I make a phone call and we're out of this size. We need a few more, and a box of helmets shows up. So, they also, they connection to the community. That's one thing that I enjoy about this community. And I'm sure it's not just this community, many communities, but I've had the opportunity to connect with some of the most fantastic, community-minded, selfless people in this project, and man, I hope it goes on for years and years. But again, lcbcbikes.org, or you can print it out, long ways, all one word, lakecitybicyclecollective.org, and just go in there and see what we're doing. And again, if you want to make a donation, hit that donate button. If you want to know where to drop a bicycle off, the address is in there. If you want an opportunity to volunteer, there's a couple of different places that where you can call or you can send an email if that's more comfortable for you. We make it as easy as we can for you to catch up with us. Yeah, that's about it.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you and Coeur d'Alene also, on behalf of Coeur d'Alene, thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're welcome.